guys, welcome back, or if you're new, hi, how are ya? So today I am excited to let you guys know that I have officially read all of the Percy Jackson books. I know. It has been a little under a year since I've originally read the Percy Jackson series for the first time, and since then I have read all of the Percy Jackson books in the whole Percy Jackson universe. And by all of them, I truly do mean all of them, including all of the side books, all of the graphic novels, all of the survival guides, all of them. I have read them all. I mean, minus a few, because they weren't actually written by Rick Riordan himself, so I don't really count those. But for the most part, I did read all of them. So with that being said, I am here to give you guys the ultimate guide to the Percy Jackson universe. I want to preface this by saying that I am by no means an expert. So if you're ready to comment and let me know how wrong I am, I want you to know that first off, I'm not an expert, so you're just talking to a wall when it comes to criticizing me about this. I am simply making this because I wish there was someone that made something like this that was comprehensive to someone that's just starting out. And I feel like as someone who has recently read all of them and hasn't really been, inundated with a lot of Percy Jackson growing up, I'm here to help you. And from one person to another that just is casually reading through it, I'm here to let you know all the things you need to know before getting into the Percy Jackson series. Or if you're already in it, you've read the first 5, I'm here to let you know whether or not some of them are worth it. If they're not, what are some pros and cons with reading them? So yeah, we're just gonna get right into it. The way I read Percy Jackson was the original 5. Then I read the Heroes of Olympus, the Trials of Apollo, then Magnus Chase, then the Kane Chronicles, and then all of the side books. So if you ever look on Goodreads, all of the books that are like 2.5, 4.5, whatever, I read all of those while simultaneously also reading the graphic novels. And the graphic novels are the ones that are available right now are the first 5 books of the Percy Jackson series, as well as the 4 books in the Heroes of Olympus series. The House of Hades literally just came out in graphic novel form in the past 2 days since I'm recording this. So on like the 24th of September, that's when it came out. And I did read that in time for this book. By the way, I also did read the 2 books that came after the 5, so books 6 and 7. And I also did read The Sun and the Star, which is Nico's book. So I did read all of them. And then also the Kane Chronicles has all of the books made into graphic novels, and Magnus Chase and Trials of Apollo don't have it as of now, but I think they might. Who knows? So that's kind of the general order that I've read all of the Percy Jackson books in. I don't think that is the right order, my personal opinion. I don't think that was the right order because it kind of made it a little bit confusing as I was reading through some of the side books. So here's my recommended reading. Again, this is my opinion. So if you have a different reading order, definitely feel free to comment it. But if you're gonna tell me that I'm wrong, that's a whole other story. Because I feel like there's actually no wrong reading order unless you read like the Heroes of Olympus before the original 5 Percy Jackson. You know what I mean? But I feel like some of the other side books that have come out, there's not really a true reading order in that sense, okay? So let me know what your reading order is, what you would recommend other people, and then I'm gonna go into what I would recommend people that are just coming into the Percy Jackson universe. I would say what's on Goodreads is actually a pretty good indicator of what the order kind of should be based on the timeline of the story from start to finish on what it is currently. I'll go into a little bit on whether or not you actually need to read some of these side books that are like the 0.5 books that are in between. This is just the reading order if you want to be like me and read through everything. I gotta say, before I get into it, there are 3 books that I did not read, and it's only because 1, they were not accessible via my library, and also to buy in general, it was not very accessible. And also 2, they aren't even written by Rick Riordan. So since that's the case, I didn't really feel the need to like go the extra mile to try and find these books since they were already kind of hard to find anyway. So the first one is the Percy Jackson and the Olympians, the Ultimate Guide, which was written by M.J. Knight. And then the second one is Demigods and Monsters, Your Favorite Authors on Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, which has nothing to do with the story. And then the Kane Chronicles Survival Guide. I I don't think it's written by Rick Riordan, first off, but also too, it was so hard to find that book like in a digital format. And I'm not gonna purchase a physical version because I don't personally like Kane Chronicles enough to have that as a physical copy. No offense. So it literally would have gone to waste, and I'm not doing that. So those are the 3 books that I did not read, but they are really not contributing to this. So outside of those 3, this is the reading order that I would go in if you want to read every single book in the entire Percy Jackson universe. And by the way, I'm looking to the side because I have notes, so don't mind me. Anyways, so the first 5 books is The Lightning Thief, The Sea of Monsters, The Battle Labyrinth, The Titan's Curse, and The Last Olympian. Those are the 5 books in the first Percy Jackson series. No matter what, you should be reading that. There is a novella that slots in between the Battle Labyrinth and the Titan's Curse, which is Percy Jackson and the Sword of Hades. You don't have to read it, honestly. It goes into the reason why Bob loses his memory. So if you want to know more about that, definitely read it. But if you don't really care for it and you just want the main story, you can skip it. And then between the Percy Jackson, the first 5 books in the series, and the Heroes of Olympus, there's a bunch of short stories that are out there that you can read. There's 5.1, which is Percy Jackson and the Singer of Apollo. It's just like a quick little side thing about a quest that Apollo gives to Percy and Grover. So if you want to read that, you can. And then 5.2, 5.3, 5.4. If you are gonna read those, then you would need to step aside and start reading the Kane Chronicles. I wouldn't say you need to read all of the Kane Chronicles, but you would have to then branch off and read at least the first Kane Chronicles and then go back into 5.2, 5.3, 5.4, because that's where there's a crossover with Percy, Annabeth, Sadie, and Carter. So if you really want to enjoy that crossover, then I would recommend the first 5, the first Kane Chronicles, then go back to 5.2, 5.3, 5.4. You could then go back and read Kane Chronicles 2 and 3. The first book is The Red Pyramid, the second book is The Throne of Fire, and then the third is The Serpent's Shadow. You could do that before you get into the Heroes of Olympus series. I mean, you could also not do that too, because it's really not that important to the main story. It's like a side spin-off thing about Egyptian mythology versus the Greek Roman mythology. So you kind of get into a different world, but it literally contributes nothing to the main storyline of Percy Jackson and that like main timeline, you know what I mean? So you could do that, but if you want to skip that for now, you can. My only caveat with that is that when I didn't do that, I was a little bit confused on where it was in the timeline. But if that doesn't matter to you, then it really doesn't matter when you read 5.2, 5.3, 5.4, and then the Kane Chronicles. Between the Battle of Labyrinth and the Last Olympian, you can also read the Demigod Files, which is like Percy kind of guiding you through like the different Greek lore. You know what I mean? Like with the creatures and stuff, and like you have tests and puzzles and stuff. You don't have to read it either. Personally, I don't think you really do. But if you want to read through it all, the order should actually be The Lightning Thief, The Sea of Monsters, The Titan's Curse, The Battle of Labyrinth, The Demigod Files, Percy Jackson and the Sword of Hades, The Last Olympian, Percy Jackson and the Singer of Apollo, The Kane Chronicles, The Red Pyramid, or honestly, all 3 of them if you want to read all 3 of them, and then The Son of Sobek, The Staff of Seraphis, The Crown of Ptolemy. I'm so sorry if I'm pronouncing these wrongs. So if you want to read all of them, that's what I would recommend before you get into the Heroes of Olympus series. If not, just read the first 5. It's not a big deal. Then we go into the Heroes of Olympus, which is a continuation of the Percy Jackson series, but we have now introduced a whole new array of characters, a whole new prophecy, and they're older too, so there is that. So in this era of books, then we have books 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Those are the main books in the Heroes of Olympus, but again, if you want to read some of the side books, you could also read the Demigod Diaries in between the Son of Neptune and the Mark of Athena, and then you could also read Percy Jackson's Greek Gods in between the House of Hades and the Blood of Olympus, and then Percy Jackson's Greek Heroes after the Blood of Olympus. But the Demigod Diaries is basically like the Demigod Files, but just a little bit more information. There's puzzles and stuff like that. It's fun, I guess, if you like learning about new things, but if you don't really care for that, you could just skip this book, to be quite honest with you guys. And then also the same thing with Percy Jackson's Greek Gods and Percy Jackson's Greek Heroes. I mean, they're nice to read if you are interested in the Greek mythology lore, but they don't contribute anything to the main story. So they're there if you want to read them, but if you don't want to read them, it's not the end of the world. So the Heroes of Olympus arc of the Percy Jackson series, if you want to read all of the books, this is the order. It's the Lost Hero, the Son of Neptune, the Demigod Diaries, the Mark of Athena, the House of Hades, Percy Jackson's Greek Gods, the Blood of Olympus, Percy Jackson's Greek Heroes, and that's it. But if you just want to read the books in the main series, just read the Lost Hero, the Son of Neptune, the Mark of Athena, the House of Hades, and the Blood of Olympus. Now we have the side stories. Well, kind of the side stories. I would say immediately after the Heroes of Olympus, there's not really a big overarching prophecy, kind of like how there was for the first 5 and then the Heroes of Olympus. I feel like all the books after the Heroes of Olympus, there aren't really high stakes like that. And I don't know if Rick is planning to have another arc of that, because even books 6 and 7 so far are not really high stakes like that either. So I have a feeling he's gonna maybe introduce a new school and then do that. I don't know. Truthfully, I don't really know, but we'll see. But after the Heroes of Olympus, if you want to follow the main storyline of the Percy Jackson timeline, you would then go into the Trials of Apollo, which is the Hidden Oracle, the Dark Prophecy, the Burning Maze, the Tyrant's Tomb, and the Tower of Nero. There are 5 books in the Trials of Apollo, but there's technically 2 books in between, kind of like the Demigod Files and the Demigod Diaries. So in between the Dark Prophecy and the Burning Maze would be Camp Half-Blood Confidential, and then also between the Tyrant's Tomb and the Tower of Nero, it would be Camp Jupiter, Classified, Probatio's Journal. I think that's how you say it. They're very similar to each other, where it just kind of talks about camp life and just what goes on and stuff. So if you are interested in hearing like side stories and stuff like that, you can read those, but again, they're not really necessary. And then to continue on from that, if you want to continue the main storyline, you would then read The Chalice of the Gods and Wrath of the Triple Goddess, which is not very high stakes, because this series, I think we're getting 3 books, maybe 5, I don't really know, but it's seeming like 3. And this section of Percy Jackson books, it's focusing on Percy completing quests in order to get a letter of recommendation to apply and get into New Rome University. It's the first 2 books so far have been very low stakes. I like them, they're a fun time, but you know, it's still following the main timeline of Percy going to college and being in high school and figuring that stuff out, but it's not like a grand prophecy or anything like that. So you can wrap up the main timeline with The Chalice of the Gods and Wrath of the Triple Goddess, but if you want to continue on and stay in this whole universe, you could also read the Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard series. So this series is not directly connected to the Percy Jackson universe, but the main character Magnus is cousins with Annabeth, so it's still related to the Percy Jackson universe, but it literally has no impact, not really, I don't think, on the Percy Jackson main timeline. So with that, you can read The Sword of the Summer, The Hammer of Thor, and The Ship of the Dead. Those are the 3 main books in that series, but there are other side books that you can read as well, which is Hotel Valhalla, Guide to the Norse Worlds, and then also 9 from the 9 Worlds. Honestly, if you just want to learn more about Norse mythology, they're not bad reads, and also 9 from the 9 Worlds is also side stories of main characters from the Magnus Chase series, so if you finish the series and you kind of miss reading about them and the characters, you could definitely read Nine from the Nine Worlds. I listened to it as an audiobook. I really liked that experience, but Magnus Chase was my least favorite series in all of them. So personally, if I wasn't doing this guide, I would have no need to read any of the Magnus Chase series, but it's personally up to you and whether or not you are into that. Personally, for me, something about Norse mythology I've learned through reading Magnus Chase just does not click in my brain. I don't know why, but it just doesn't. Whereas the Kane Chronicles, it's not really related to the Percy Jackson series, but especially since it's not Greek mythology and it's Egyptian mythology, I just click with Egyptian mythology way more. So I found it way more fun and interesting, and I also like the characters more in the Kane Chronicles, I'm not gonna lie. I did like the characters more. I did like how that school was run more than the Magnus Chase world. But again, that's just personal preference. I'm sure there are so many of you guys out there that love Magnus Chase and would recommend it to everybody, and I'm so happy for you guys. I am jealous. I wish I could experience that type of joy reading that series, but I can't, so here we are. So that is the general reading guide. There are also the graphic novels that you can read as well. They are literally, like, quite literally just the books in a graphic novel form. So say you just read the first 5 books and it takes you a while to get through it and you just don't remember some of the stuff that has happened. The graphic novels is also a great way to just kind of revisit that and just be reminded of the things. I wouldn't say you should substitute the graphic novels as the end-all be-all over the books. The graphic novels, I had a lot of mixed feelings about the graphic novels. I am not gonna lie, especially as an avid graphic novel reader, it was sometimes very tough for me to get through it, and it's for a multitude of reasons. So we're just gonna get into it. So with all the graphic novels, of course, when you adapt it from the book to a graphic novel, you can't really adapt everything. So I feel like one of the big things about the Percy Jackson books and one of the main charms about the books is the fact that you get to be inside their heads. So for the first 5 books and even like all of the Percy Jackson books, technically, we're in the head of Percy Jackson, and we all know and love Percy Jackson and his point of view, his sass, and what his thoughts are. So that's a very big charm and very big aspect of the books. Same with the Heroes of Olympus series and even the Trials of Apollo, even Magnus Chase and the Kane Chronicles. All of them, we are in the brains of these characters as we go through the stories and them figuring things out. And with a graphic novel, you just cannot capture that, and they certainly did not capture that. It was mostly just the actions of what happened. And, you know, some of them did a great job capturing that. Like, I'm not gonna lie and sit here and say that it was bad. Like, not all of them were bad. Not all of them did a bad job adapting it. And also, I think that's just ultimately what it is with adapting it from a novel to a graphic novel. Since it is going from text to like visualization, you can only do so much, you know? So I totally get it. But with that, they did cut certain things out of the novel in order to adapt it to the graphic novel, which some of the things I definitely understand why they either cut it or made changes to it, but other things I was kind of frustrated as a Percy Jackson reader. Not gonna lie. I'm gonna be very honest with you guys. There are certain things that I was like, huh? Why did they do that? Like, for example, the first 5 books, listen, they are children, okay? There's only so much that we can really root for children. You know what I mean? We're not shipping them like hardcore like we would like an adult couple. That's not what I'm saying here. But it was a very wholesome build-up between Percy and Annabeth, going from kind of enemies, to be honest, to friends, to then developing feelings and admitting that to each other. And just the wholesomeness of that relationship, I feel like, was kind of lost in the graphic novels. They kiss, I think, towards the end of the Percy Jackson series in the first 5 books. And they don't do that in the graphic novel. Literally, they don't even seem like they like each other. In the first 5 graphic novels, it genuinely does, it just seems like they're friends. And I feel like that's such a shame because it was such a nice build-up to see that as they grew up. And to just kind of diminish that was kind of disappointing. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. Even in the Heroes of Olympus series, some of the things, it just did not translate well. Like, also, for example, the Mark of Athena, the whole point towards the end of the book is that Annabeth goes on her own side quest in order to find the statue of Athena, in order to recover it, and also to get the Romans to like come to their aid, whatever. We get to hear Annabeth's reasoning for why she does that and just her thoughts as she goes along through this journey. In the graphic novel, it was very abrupt. It was kind of like, okay, bye, I have to do this on my own, and that was that. And like, okay, we can't exactly convey thoughts into a graphic novel the same way as we would a novel. I totally get that, but it was just very abrupt. And a lot of things like that kept happening in the graphic novel. So for me personally, like, as much as there were great moments, like the whole heartbreaking thing with the end of the Mark of Athena, that still got me. I saw that illustration, I was like, oh my god, my heart hurts so much. I feel like I'm being stabbed all over again. But also too, it was just inconsistent. And I think that was my biggest gripe with the graphic novel. Which, by the way, speaking of inconsistency, another thing that's very inconsistent with the graphic novels is the illustration style. I did not like the illustration style at all. It was just so crazy. Like, sometimes I liked it, but other times I was like, what is going on? Like, the art style was so wildly different, and it wasn't even from series to series. It was like book to book was very different from one another. And even within the graphic novel, it was like panel to panel. It was so wildly different from one another. And listen, I am not a graphic designer. I am not a digital artist, so I don't know what goes into making a graphic novel series. So I'm not here to knock anybody. Like, I'm not blaming the artists at all. I'm sure they did the best that they could with what they were given. And some of it was stylistic choices that I just personally did not like, and that's okay. That's completely okay. Not every graphic novel is meant for everybody, so I totally get it. But it just made me wonder, did anybody say anything about this? Is this on purpose that it's so wildly different from one another? I don't know. And I know I'm not the only one that has thought this about the art style. Like, I know a lot of people in the Goodreads reviews did not like the art style, so I know I'm not the only one, and I feel very bad saying that because I'm sure the artists have put a lot of work into it. I'm not trying to like trash it or anything like that. I'm not. I appreciate them for the effort that they have put into it, but it just was not for me in terms of the style and illustration. And also, last but not least, the pacing was weird. The pacing was either very fast, things were skipped, and I don't know, it just made it very weird. I didn't really enjoy that aspect of some of it, especially in the later book series, like the Heroes of Olympus. Some of them were just really weirdly paced for me. So that is why when I say don't let the graphic novel series be the end-all be-all, don't let it be the end-all be-all, you know? I think it's a great tool to refresh yourself on what happened in the novels, but knowing that they don't include everything, I think it shouldn't be the only source of truth when it comes to the series. So read it as a reminder, refresh yourself as you go through the series, but don't lean on it as the only source of the series. Overall, I really enjoyed this series. There were definitely times, because I knew I was going to make this video, that I struggled to get through all of the books because I felt like sometimes I was forcing myself to read the books in order to get this done. And if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't have rushed myself to get this done as soon as possible. But we're already here, so you guys can learn from my mistake. At the end of the day, there's really no rush to read through all of the books. They're not going anywhere. They've been written for years, and they're gonna be there. It's really that simple. If I could go back and tell myself that it's really not that serious, and I could literally read it whenever I want, you could literally read it whenever you want. I think as long as you read the core books, you'll understand what's happening in the series. So if I could do it all over again, I would definitely skip through some of the side books. Like, some of them weren't all that bad. Percy Jackson and the Singer of Apollo wasn't that bad. It was a fun little romp. It took me like 15 minutes to read. It really wasn't all that serious. It really doesn't take that long. Percy Jackson and the Sword of Hades, reading it after the fact with everything that happened in the Heroes of Olympus with Bob, and especially after the Sun and the Star. Oh, by the way, I don't think I mentioned it. The Sun and the Star, if I were to read The Sun and the Star, I would read The Sun and the Star after The Tower of Nero. I didn't mention that. I like The Sun and the Star. So anyways, sorry, I did not mean to skip over that. But The Sun and the Star is also great too. Same with The Sword of Hades. Percy Jackson and the Sword of Hades, it was a quick little read for me, but if you love Bob as much as I love Bob, Big Bob and Small Bob, I think you will have more appreciation for it after reading that short story. If I were to do it all over again, would I read the Demigod Files? No, I would not. Genuinely, I just did not really enjoy those books. I could definitely see if you were, reading the Percy Jackson series, you're already obsessed with the world, your need to read everything Percy Jackson is insatiable, then yes, read the Demigod Files. Read Percy Jackson and the Greek Heroes. Read them all, okay? Nobody's stopping you. But if I had to go back, I would not read those books. I'm just at a different point in my life where I just don't need to read those books. I love the Percy Jackson series, don't get me wrong, but I just don't need to read the side books like that. I really don't. And if I took my time and read through the books and just decided to read the books when I wanted to, I don't even know if I would have read the Magnus Chase series. I feel like I would have maybe read the first one and then been like, I don't think I want to read the rest. And that would have been okay. I feel like if you don't read all of the Percy Jackson books, that doesn't make you any less of a Percy Jackson fan. I feel like you could read the first 5 books and stop at that, and you could still be a Percy Jackson fan. Of course, if you're just trying to read the bare bones, I would still recommend just reading the first 5 Percy Jackson books and then the Heroes of Olympus. And if you want to stop there, you can. I totally get it. But at least read those 2 series in the Percy Jackson, I would say at least. That is my guide to the Percy Jackson universe. Of course, if you guys have differing opinions, I would love to hear it as long as it's respectful. At the end of the day, I'm okay with disagreement as long as it's respectful of not just me, but everybody else in the comments too. So we can talk about any disagreements you guys have, any agreements. I would love to hear it, honestly. I think it's so interesting that people have different reading orders. And when I was first reading through the first Percy Jackson book and I posted my video, people had so many different reading orders. And honestly, it was a little overwhelming for me when I was first reading it. But I'm hoping that if you guys are seeing this and you are trying to figure out how to read through it, this helps you as a casual Percy Jackson reader to another. Or maybe you're not a casual Percy Jackson reader, I don't know. But as one Percy Jackson fan to another, I hope this helps you. If not, feel free to leave a comment and ask any questions if you guys have any. If you guys want to talk more about Percy Jackson in the comments too, I would love, love, love to talk about it. But yeah, that is it, guys. I will see you guys next time. Bye!